Ohio State wants to tell a legendary story. It doesn't care about narratives. Welcome to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. These are Snap Judgments. That's Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. We talked to Jim Knowles and we talked to Chip Kelly on a Tuesday in this building as Ohio State gets ready for the national title game. Play for one of these next Monday night. An amusing, entertaining, and also informative press conference. And I love this notion that Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles come in here and just don't pay any attention to outside noise whatsoever, and then just laugh at whatever suggestion about a narrative about the program is.
Yeah, they don't care. Which is like not surprising. Why would they? They got more important things to do. It was fun. It was loose. I thought that was an interesting window into how Ohio State's feeling right now. Which, like, how could you not feel good about going to play for a national championship? Yeah, neither one overly concerned, I guess, with the Chip Kelly seemed to learn that we even speak in narrative terms when we talk about college football. So yeah, I don't think either one cares right now. They're worried about
I'm not sure that I believe that part.
I mean, that he learned what narratives are. Yeah, I don't think that's right. But I think they're more concerned with getting a first down against Notre Dame and stopping Notre Dame from getting first downs.
Yeah, and both of those guys have been doing this long enough. They are not going to fall into any traps. And I think they legitimately mean it as well. They're not going to provide bulletin board material for Notre Dame, and they legitimately respect Notre Dame. The way that they talk about on both sides of the football, the power rushing attack for the Notre Dame offense, and the way that they have proven themselves over the course of the year defensively. Both coordinators have a lot on their plate, so I think it was a interesting balance to look at the way that they could joke, which I think is a reflection of the confidence that Ohio State has right now in itself and what it's doing well. And then to switch gears, if there is a question about Notre Dame where it's like, oh, well, this is going to be a challenge, that's going to be a challenge, here's a challenge over here. I mean, these two teams are deservedly playing for the national title. So, of course, there's going to be a lot on the plates of the coordinators.
And how could you not, like, at this stage of the game, not have healthy respect for who your opponent is? It's always very funny to me when people tend to ask questions that I don't know what the end goal is, but like to ask, even last week, there were text people asking like, hey, Ohio State, do you think you're the more physical team? And you're going to run over Texas in the Cotton Bowl? Like, what are they supposed to say to that? And then today, it's not a bad point, I guess, to bring up Chip Kelly that this is the last game of the year. Maybe that leads to some creative freedom because there's not anything after it that you think like teams might pick up on in terms of tendencies or something like that. But it was said with like a bravado that like, hey, you think you can do whatever you want to Notre Dame? And Chip Kelly was like, well, no, because they're very good on defense. And I think like there's some conversation out there right about whether or not this might be a lopsided game. I know the spread has come down a little bit, which is interesting. I don't know that Ohio State's approaching it like it's already won this thing. There's too much respect for that program, and especially Notre Dame's defense for them to feel that way.
The notion that Chip Kelly could just go into next Monday night and dial up anything he could possibly dream of I'm amused by the way that Chip Kelly responded to it, because this is the number 2 scoring defense in the country. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't just get to go mess around like you're playing Akron. And they just came off of a game against a really talented, well-coached, great scheme, highly motivated Texas defense in the semifinal. And they did some things that limited Jeremiah Smith specifically, but the Ohio State offense as a whole. Like, you don't just get to go do whatever you want. You have Jeremiah, well, he's going to have 200 yards, or that's going to go here, or the ball's going to go there. I think by now, especially the time that we've spent just covering Chip Kelly for 1 year, he's not going to, fall into those traps or tricks or pretend like, yeah, well, fully healthy and I can just watch this, cook it up. Like, it does depend on what Notre Dame is doing. And, and it comes down more to the answers and adjustments that Ohio State will make on Monday night rather than scripting the way the game is going to go.
It would be great if it were as simple as we sometimes make it out to be with our questions. I think Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles both know that is not the case. Even with this conversation, which I think is an interesting one about Notre Dame's defensive tendencies and how much they want to play single high and how much man coverage they play. There are tweaks within that. There are variations within that high dependency on man coverage, that it's not quite as simple as like, well, you can just run by them, right, and throw the ball deep the whole game. Like, no, it doesn't quite work that way. And Ohio State has played this Notre Dame defense twice in the last 3 years and scored a total of 38 points or something like that in those 2 games. Like, they know what kind of tests they're up against, and it's on both sides of the ball, right? Berm actually pointed this out. I had not realized it. Like Notre Dame averages more points per game than Ohio State does. They do it in a much different way offensively, but this is a very good team that Ohio State is playing. I don't think they're here like by mistake. I think they've earned their way here. I enjoyed what Chip Kelly said, that he said, and you can disagree with him if you want, but he said this is the two best teams in the country, and they weren't voted on to get here. They earned it to get here. So nothing about Monday night, at least in Ohio State's mind right now, is going to come easily for them.
Well, you can disagree with the first part. You think they're the two best teams over the course of the year. Maybe people would disagree with that. I think the folks that are still wanting to dwell on the lowest points of the season for both of them, which, Ohio State was a 20-point favorite and lost the rivalry. That's not, to me, quite the same thing as Northern Illinois in September, but
slightly different.
Yeah, I don't think that's the same. But if that's the straw that you're going to grab to say that they're not the two best teams, well, fine. But look at who they beat on the way to get here. This is different than any other format, and you have had to beat top 12 teams all in a row, 3 times to get here for both of them. They both had to play in the opening round. So you certainly can't question the path to get there, or if they're deserving or not deserving. They were absolutely among the 12 best teams, and now they have beaten everyone in their path. And especially when you look at what that means for Ohio State along the way, 2 SEC teams, and then an emphatic victory over the number 1 seed and the Big Ten champion and an undefeated team. So that part is undeniable. If you want to argue about the other part, fine, doesn't matter, because this trophy right here is going to go to the winner on Monday night, no matter how you feel.
Yeah, they're not gonna take it away from them. I do like. Yeah, I think.
Does the winner have to play Georgia afterwards, or
nope? Georgia had their
Georgia's out. Okay, great.
Yeah. No, it'll be the. I think like the most well-earned national championship we've had. Like, you want to go through the annals of history and say like this champ's better than that champ, just like from a dude to dude standpoint. I don't know that I'd argue with that for some teams, but no one's had to go through this path that either team has had to go through, but especially Ohio State's. Like I saw the graphic last week that was like checking off the boxes of all the teams that are currently in the top 10 that Ohio State would have had to beat this year on its way to win a national championship. Show me another team that had to do that in the history of college football. This would be unprecedented for the Buckeyes. I think that's why, they're just motivated by wanting to win the championship. But I do think when Ryan Day talks about like the story and how eager they are to tell it when it's all over, and hopefully over with a national championship, I think that's what he's leaning on. It's just like it was the same deal in 2014. Ohio State had accomplished something that no one in the sport had ever had the chance to do before, and now they're on the doorstep of doing the same thing.
This may well be just a conversation for after the season is over, after the playoff is over, but I hope that the path that Ohio State and Notre Dame have both had to take to this title game recalibrates some brains, that your lowest moment of the season, if it is trumped by multiple big-time wins, 3, 4, top 10, top 25 wins, that's a better reflection of your potential and who you are than if you lost one bad game, which I think maybe people held against Notre Dame for a really long time. And maybe would have disqualified them from a 4-team playoff. Maybe that was the problem with the 4-team playoff. Maybe it was a problem with the voters or the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. I think we've seen multiple years where it's like, okay, you're talking about Iowa or Purdue losses for Ohio State and keeping them out. Well, what about those top 10 wins or the road wins that they like? That I think is a better reflection. And again, maybe that's not a valid conversation or debate to be having right now. But I hope that that's one of the lessons that people learn and carry this forward into the future of the college football playoff, because you look at the teams that lost in this college football playoff so far and the ones that maybe got in that had questionable resumes, look at who they beat more than the loss column. That's the end of my soapbox.
Well, no, it'll be an interesting offseason, I think, as we digest all of that, right? Like college football for so long was like a season was defined by what you didn't accomplish or whatever your lowest low was. And I think we're clearly in a different era. But then how do you apply that logic to certain games? Like it's all, I think it's all good conversation that we can have when the game's over. I don't think it matters much on Monday night. Yeah,
it doesn't matter as much either to what Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles were talking about on a Tuesday in here. What else did you take away from the coordinators, if anything?
I thought so. I tried to ask what we talked about on the daily on Tuesday about like Ohio State playing more 4-3 or less 4-3, I guess, against 12 personnel. I thought Jim Knowles' curt answer to my question was maybe informative, that perhaps they are viewing Notre Dame as a team that plays 12 personnel a little bit differently than Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas. So maybe we might see an uptick in some of those free linebacker sets. But then on the other side of the token, I guess like Jim Knowles was pretty effusive in his praise of how Jordan Hancock played against Texas. I think he said it was one of his better games, and maybe the best game that Jordan has played this year. And he's been awesome, I think, in the entire postseason with some of the stuff they're doing with him. So for me, that was always a really difficult conversation. It's like, do you really want to take that guy off the field to play three linebackers? And I think with the way that he's played, with the way that has situated Caleb Downs within this defense, it makes it an incredibly difficult conversation, all the more difficult, I think nearly impossible to try to figure out. So I don't know that I was expecting to leave this press conference with a great read on how Ohio State was going to choose to defend Notre Dame, but I suppose I leave feeling a little more confident that maybe we'll see at least more 4-3 than we've seen up to this point, but probably still not the automatic, let's play 50 snaps of it against Notre Dame.
Well, I think that goes back to a little bit with what we're talking about with Chip Kelly. You don't have to decide today and then, well, that's it. That right. You're going to play every single snap that way. I think Ohio State has a point now where you have a body of work for Jordan Hancock and a growing one for Arvell Reese, where he had enough opportunities where they went to 4-3, or even where he played more extensively earlier in the season in some of the two linebacker packages, where he has done a number of things. He's shown what he can do. There's no question about the physicality, the athleticism that he brings when he's out there. And if you find that in the first quarter, playing with Jordan Hancock on the field is not working against Jeremiah Love or Riley Leonard, well then you adjust to that. Mm-hmm. I think one thing that has impressed me as much as anything about these group of coordinators, Ryan Day in the postseason, the entire assistant, staff, is the way that they've adjusted. It used to always be like, well, Ohio State's going to get to halftime and then they're going to come out and bury you in the third quarter. They've shown some willingness and ability, I think, to adjust earlier in games, to take advantage of situations if one arises, if a need arises, an issue that they can address quickly, because they have now built up both offensively and defensively the depth and a lot of different looks and ways to find solutions, which that's what you have to do. And they designed the whole season to be doing this on Monday night.
Isn't it great? Like, for as much as we talked about like the pace of play and all that, there was an end purpose in mind. And I think we tried to be cognizant of that as we discussed it during the season, but it didn't make it any less frustrating, I think, at times as it was happening in the moment. But I think, at least I can speak for myself personally, it's like, whatever, it kind of worked, right? Not kind of worked. I think it did work. Well, we'll see. For one of we'll see. Like, I guess this will be the ultimate determining factor of whether or not it was worth it. But to see like the way that Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins are playing right now, and I thought Jim Knowles put it in pretty clear terms what it's meant for his defense, because he said he's been on a lot of teams where the offense has played super fast, and he didn't feel like that put the defense in a great position, that he felt worn down by the end of the year. And clearly that's not the case with this defense now. And I know like Ohio State has had some injuries. You can't protect against that, right? But you can protect against the wear and tear, the bumps and bruises, and trying to have guys as close as they can be to 100% capacity, provided they don't suffer a debilitating injury once you get to this point. And I think in hindsight now we can say that Ohio State, for the most part, I think has handled that quite masterfully to get there.
Yeah, seems like they're going to be pretty close to that. I mean, again, discounting the season-ending injuries, Jim Knowles talked about Denzel Burke and JT Tuimoloau, said that was above his pay grade, but they're both trending towards going to be able to go on Monday night against Notre Dame. So that's just a little bit of housekeeping as the Buckeyes continue rolling along with practice here this week. They leave on Friday. They will get down to Atlanta, and we'll be there one day early, awaiting their arrival eagerly. But we got way more content coming before then. These have been some snap judgments on a Tuesday in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. We'll be back with the podcast daily, probably talking a little stocks. If you want to see those, we'll be back tomorrow for that. So that's Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. We'll see you.